Hello, this is Jennifer with Make My Heart Smile, and today I want to share with you a fairy tale. Not just any fairy tale, but my personal favorite fairy tale. This adaptation is many years old, and although fairy tales are very ancient, there have been many variations told, and this is the one I remember hearing and reading as a child. And so I wanted to share it with you today. Now, as you know, fairy tales have many different elements compared to other stories. They usually start with a once upon a time, and they usually end with happily ever after. They're obviously fiction, and they have good and evil characters. There's usually the presence of magic, talking animals, or special objects. And there's often a lesson at the end, such as the importance of kindness or bravery, which you are going to see in this story. So, read along with me. Once upon a time, there lived a very rich merchant who had 3 pretty daughters. They lived in a beautiful house and had many servants to look after them. The youngest daughter was the prettiest of them all and was called Beauty. She was also very kind and good. Her 2 elder sisters were pretty, but they were neither kind nor good. One day their father came home looking very worried. When his daughters asked him what was the matter, he replied that he had lost his fortune. They would have to sell their lovely house and go to live in a cottage in the country. The elder sisters were very angry when they heard this news, but Beauty thought how nice it would be to live in the country, surrounded by the woods and fields. So the merchant found a little cottage, and he and his family all went to live there. Beauty was very happy and worked all day in the house and garden. Her elder sisters, however, grumbled all the time because they had to work and no longer had pretty clothes and jewels to wear. Their father grew fruit and vegetables in his garden to make enough money for his family to live comfortably. One day, after the family had lived in their cottage for about a year, the merchant told his daughters that he had to go to a distant town on business. He said that he may not return until the very next day. He promised that he would bring them each a gift and ask them what they would like. The elder sisters asked for jewels and satin dresses, but all Beauty wanted was for her father to return home safely. When he said that she must have a gift, she asked for a bunch of red roses. As their father rode away on horseback, Beauty stood at the door of the cottage and waved to him. When the merchant had finished his business in town, he set off on the long journey home. After he had been riding for some time, he began to feel tired and cold, and by now he was in the middle of a dense wood and thought he was lost. He longed to find somewhere to rest, and then suddenly he came to a place in the woods where the trees cleared and formed a long avenue. He dismounted from his horse and struggled on foot through the deep snow to the entrance of the long avenue. And he could see in the distance a large building that looked like a palace. His horse followed him until they reached the end of the avenue, where they found before them a really magnificent palace. There was no one in sight, so he took his horse around the back of the palace and found the stables. He fed it and left it there to rest. When he returned to the front of the palace, he noticed that the door was open, so he climbed the steps and walked in. As he entered the hall, he saw that one of the doors leading off was open. It seemed as though the whole place was deserted, so he entered the room and was delighted by the sight which met his eyes. This was the dining room, and the table was fully prepared with every kind of food you could imagine. As he was hungry after his long and hard journey, he could not resist eating some of the food and soon had a full stomach. This made him feel tired, so he wandered off in search of somewhere to rest. He came upon a magnificent bedroom with an enormous fire blazing in the grate and a large bed with huge pillows. Not having seen anyone in the palace, he decided to sleep and continue his search of the palace in the morning. But when morning arrived, the merchant woke to find the table already prepared for breakfast, which he ate quickly and then set out to find whoever was living in the palace. His search eventually led him outside, and he was pleased to discover it had stopped snowing. He was, however, unaware that he was being watched. On his way through the grounds, he saw a beautiful rose garden. This reminded him of Beauty's request for some red roses, so he went to gather a bunch for her. He had only broken off one rose when he heard a terrible roar behind him. On turning around, he saw that it was a horrible beast. The beast was very angry with the merchant for eating his food and sleeping in his bed, and then repaying this kindness by stealing the roses. Beauty's father explained that they were a present for his daughter, and so the beast said that he would spare his life on the condition that one of his daughters came to live at the palace. The merchant reluctantly agreed to this plan and set off for home. The three sisters were pleased to see their father, but they soon realized that he was very unhappy. When he told them what had happened, they were all very upset. Naturally, none of the sisters wanted to leave home and live with an ugly beast. However, because her father had made a promise, Beauty said that she would go. After 4 weeks had passed, her father very sadly took Beauty back to the palace and left her outside. Beauty spent a long time wandering around outside the palace before she dared to enter. She admired the gardens and trees, and the palace looked really beautiful and deserted. Time passed, and eventually she plucked up her courage enough to enter the palace and found to her surprise the tables were laid with food, and fires were blazing in every room. The beast was watching her all the time, and eventually they met. As her father had told her what to expect, she was not too frightened of the beast, and told him she was at the palace to fulfill her father's promise. Beauty lived at the palace quite happily for several months. There was everything she could wish for to make life happy and comfortable. She amused herself during the day, but every evening the beast joined her for supper, and they soon became great friends. Each night, however, the beast would ask Beauty to marry him, and her answer was always the same. She was very fond of the beast, but she could not marry him. He became sadder and sadder, and this upset Beauty very much. But she kept telling herself she could not possibly marry a beast. Whenever the beast walked in the garden, which Beauty did as well nearly every day, the beast would suddenly appear and present to her one of his precious roses. At first he would not tell her why he did this, but eventually he admitted it was a sign of his love for her. Although she was quite happy at the palace, Beauty did not forget her father. She still longed to see him, and one morning when she looked into the mirror, she saw a picture of her father lying ill in bed, and this worried Beauty very much, and she cried all day, longing for the evening when the beast would come to her. And when he did arrive and saw how sad she looked, he asked her what the trouble was. Beauty told him of the picture she had seen in the mirror, and asked the beast to let her return home. The beast did not like to see her so unhappy, so he agreed, and Beauty promised to come back to him after she had seen her father. The next morning, when Beauty was ready to return to her old home, the beast gave her a ring, and he told her to blow on it if she wanted to return to him, and she would immediately find herself back at the palace. He begged her to come back to him and said that he would die if she did not return. Of course, Beauty said that she would not leave him for any longer than necessary. She just wanted to make sure that her father was well. The beast then told her to blow on the magic ring, and straight away she was back at the cottage. Beauty's father and sisters were very happy and surprised to see her. Her father had not been well, but as soon as Beauty arrived he began to feel better, and they all wanted to know how she spent her time at the palace and whether the beast was very good to her. The time passed quickly, and Beauty was very happy to see her father return to his usual self. She could not believe that she had been at home for 2 weeks. Meanwhile, the poor beast was very lonely. He thought that Beauty had left him forever, and he gradually became more and more upset. He could not bear to go inside the palace and spend his time in the gardens. He did not bother to eat now that he was alone. He grew weaker and weaker, and eventually he collapsed under the trees. Back at the cottage, however, Beauty was happy. So happy to be back with her family. But she knew that she could not stay much longer. Then one night she had a terrible dream, in which she saw the beast lying very still under the trees. She was so frightened by this that in the morning she decided that she must return to the palace. The 2 elder sisters and their father did not want her to go, but Beauty could not bear to think of the beast alone and sick. She blew on her magic ring and immediately found herself back at the palace. Beauty knew that the beast never came to see her until evening, so she spent the day wandering from room to room, longing for him to appear, and then at last it was evening, but there was still no sign of the beast. Suddenly the dreadful thought struck Beauty that perhaps her dream had been true, and the beast was in the garden, lying ill. She ran as quickly as she could out into the grounds of the palace, and sure enough, there was the poor beast lying still, as though he was dead. Beauty was overcome with grief. She knelt down beside him and said, "Oh, my poor beast, if only you would get better, I will marry you. You are so kind and good." She then covered her face with her hands and cried. When she looked up, the beast was nowhere to be seen. But there was a very handsome prince by her side. "Where is my beast?" she asked. The prince explained that a wicked fairy had put a spell on him, and said that he must be a beast until a beautiful lady was willing to marry him, and then the spell would be broken. Beauty married her prince, and he arranged for her father and sisters to come to the palace, and they all lived happily ever after. I hope you've enjoyed this fairy tale, and if you did like it, please hit the like button, and if you would like to follow along, subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you next time.